Turn one soul ring.
Got it.
Said let's start. I was like, let's start.
Let's start. We've started.
Oh,
It's go time.
And let me just get my shit ready here.
get your stick on the ice. Come on.
Okay. Well, everybody, welcome to the show. This is Turn One Soul Ring. I'm Kevin,
Hey, I'm Eric.
I'm Riley.
and we have our editor Ainsley joining us once again.
Hello, I'm Ainsley.
Hello, Ainsley.
I have my stick on the ice.
Oh yeah,
Good to hear.
she's ready.
And hi, Riley.
So last week on the show, we introduced the remaining crew members of Weatherlight, as well as Weatherlight's arrival on Rath. Almost immediately after arriving on the plane, Weatherlight was attacked by Predator, which was a flying ship led by Grevin Ilvek, who was under the command of Volrath. Weatherlight survived the attack, but not without their captain falling overboard, the legacy artifacts getting stolen, including Karn and Tongarth stowing away aboard Predator to rescue the artifacts as it was flying back to Stronghold. So today we are concluding our Rath and Storm series with part 3. So we're picking back up today with a damaged Weatherlight landing in Skyshroud Forest.
Oh boy.
Boom.
After assessing the damage, the remaining crew split into two groups. The first was composed of Hannah and Miri. They went to look for Gerard or his body to bury if the fall had killed him.
Like, we both love him. We should go and find him. We'll look the hardest.
They probably wanted to go together because if only one of them went, they weren't sure what that one might do if they did find the body. You just never know what people are going to do.
You know?
Grief does strange things to people. Look at Krovax, for example.
Yeah.
So the second group was composed of Orem, Krovax, Urte, Squee, and the rest of the crew.
So it was the two women and then like 10 other people.
The rest
That makes
the rest
sense.
of the crew is probably like around like maybe 15, 20, just like nobody's left, and then the core members of the bridge crew.
Still, those are
Seems a
uneven
little
teams.
lopsided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't have thrown a squee over there with Miri and Hannah, but you know what? It's a plot device.
Well, Miri,
Get ready.
Miri would have gladly gone by herself. You know, she's capable. You know, she was exiled as a young catling, right? She's perfectly happy to travel through a forest all by herself. So to her, Hannah's just dead weight.
Oh.
Because Hannah's not a very capable fighter. You know, she's all about artifice.
I
you know,
see.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's just, walking around with that -2/-2.
Okay, you're painting more. That's funny, Eric.
He's referencing dead weight here.
Okay, you're painting more of a picture here.
I'm pretty sure Hana is a 2/2, so she would just die from dead weight. So.
Oh.
So, that crew, the second group, stayed with Weatherlight to apply repairs and to tend to those crew members that were wounded in the fight with Predator. While tending to the wounded and repairing the ship, Urte and Krovax discovered that the Thran crystal that was integral to Weatherlight's plane shifting had been damaged due to Grevin's Mogs attempting to remove it during their search for legacy artifacts.
Uh-oh.
Meaning that Weatherlight and her crew would either need to repair the crystal or find another way off Rath.
See, this is my biggest fear when it comes to something like time travel with a time machine that is physical, like in Back to the Future, where they have to rely on the DeLorean to get back. I would be so afraid that something would happen to the time machine that I wouldn't be able to get back, that I wouldn't even be able to have fun.
Yeah, time travel is anxiety-inducing for me for a few reasons. That being one of them, definitely.
So, you know.
That's why I choose not to time travel.
Definitely one of my rules, if I was going to do it, would be only go forward. I would not want to go back. And also, how I guess you'd find out how time actually worked, right? Like
You would only go forward.
Sorry?
You would only go forward.
Well, it depends. If everything was predetermined, then I would go back. Like if that's how time and the universe worked. But if nothing was predetermined and I could go back and change things,
like kill a butterfly,
or like kill my dad when he was like 15, and then I cease to I just disintegrate right there. I don't know. It could be like that, like in the movie Frequency. I don't know. It could be like waves, like in Back to the Future, right? People slowly disappear out of the pictures as Marty's mom and dad start to maybe not end up together. So yeah, just to
Fair,
avoid any
fair,
of that
fair.
stuff, I would just go forward.
We talk about time travel a lot during the lore series, I've noticed.
Well, yeah,
mean,
time
it's a
streams is
theme.
about time travel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a theme that kind of runs through these stories.
Yeah,
so.
fair enough. Yeah, and planeswalking and that whole shenanigan is...
But like when you say you would only go forwards, would you still come back to like present day?
Yeah, I would come back to like at night to sleep in my bed and stuff, so I was comfortable. Yeah.
Oh, just like a daily thing. I
Yeah,
see.
just go for like a little trip or something.
That's Kevin's dream scenario. Like if we were to be able to travel, like we could like fly somewhere, but then at night when it was time to go to sleep, he would be teleported back to his own bed to sleep.
Or some kind of holodeck situation where I just put my card key into the room, the hotel room door, and I open it up, and I'm just, the room is like
your
it's
room?
like a hologram, and it looks and feels and smells and everything like my room, and Evie's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you could just use a holodeck to go on a vacation.
That's better. That's a better idea. I
Riley,
think.
that's
Yeah.
why you're part of this.
That's an even better idea.
What's a holodeck?
It's-
You're not a Star Trek fan?
No,
Oh.
no, I didn't get into Star Trek.
Oh, I didn't really get into it either, but the next gen, the movies are good. The movies are very good. But anyways, so the Thran crystal, the Thran crystal's no good. It needs to be repaired. So while the second group that remained with Weatherlight was taking care of all of that, Miri and Hannah were still searching for signs of Gerard when they were attacked by a shapeshifter that took on both their forms. Not at the same time. When it attacked Miri, it shifted into her form, and the same was true for when it attacked Hannah.
Interesting.
It went after Miri first, cutting her left arm. Hannah moved to attack the thing with her small dagger, and Miri ordered her to stay back, and that she couldn't worry about Hannah and the shapeshifter at the same time. Miri continued to fight the thing until the creature landed another blow on the Catwoman, a stab to her left leg. At this point, Hannah realized something. She noticed that when the shapeshifter was fighting Miri, it took on all the feline grace and agility possessed by her, but when it took on Hannah's form, a far less capable fighter, the creature was a far more clumsy opponent. So, Hannah positioned herself in the eye line of the creature before it attacked Miri again, and with it trying to take on characteristics of both women, it was an easier fight. But the creature was still able to incapacitate Miri. Luckily for Hannah, though, she was able to best the creature by cutting it in half with Miri's sword, and then Hannah heaved the creature into the swampy water beneath Sky Shroud, probably to become dinner for a school of those creepy merfolk that we saw in
Nice.
part
The
one.
suicidal
Go
merfolk, yeah.
And two women that had been romantic rivals for so many years finally bonded over saving each other's lives.
Aww.
That's a good bonding sequence.
And and this is from the novel.
Forgive me.
Miri whispered,
I thought you were a burden, and you saved my life.
"I love you." And then they fall in love and they just leave without finding Gerard.
Yeah,
They're like, "Who needs that guy? He never appreciated either of us."
that's right.
So the two women continued their search for signs of Gerard until they were ambushed and taken prisoner by Skyshroud elves. This encounter was quite fortuitous because when the elves took Miri and Hannah back to their headquarters, they discovered that Gerard was already there.
He didn't
alive.
need them either.
No.
Look at that.
So the elves had found him and brought him to their village. The elven leader, Ella Domri, informed the two women that not only had they found Gerard, but their oracle had proclaimed Gerard the Corvectol, which was
Oh yeah.
I proclaim you. It's like, what? Okay.
which was someone that was foretold to unite the Kor, Vec, and Dal tribes of Rath. And once they were united, the Corvectol would lead them in an uprising against the Evankar. And also the
Oh, shit's getting heated.
yeah, the name's pretty like uninspired.
Yeah, a little on the nose there.
Truly.
Yeah, I wonder what the writers of this story came up with first, like that oracle name or the different tribes. But anyways,
Oh yeah.
that's not exactly what Gerard and his crew were in Rath for, but this new status did allow the elves and Gerard's group to form an alliance, and so with the crew members reunited, they traveled back to Weatherlight with Ella Domri and a group of his elves. Oh, and the oracle went with them as well. When the group arrived at Weatherlight, Orym and Urte informed Hannah and Gerard that although they had been able to effect repairs to the ship to make her airworthy, the damage done to the Thran crystal was something they couldn't repair at present, and they wouldn't be able to leave Rath without some kind of intervention.
This is an
There we go.
intervention.
What a great show.
There's the fears.
Oh man, that was a good show.
That's good, yeah.
I liked it up until the intervention, and then
Well, it's just a
sometimes
bummer.
you lose interest.
Yeah. It's a bummer. It's like I want to just see them. It's sort of like my 600-pound life. When they start to lose weight and get their life together, it's like, well, I don't really want to watch this now.
Oh
No.
no!
Oh man.
It's like it's sort of like once a fire is put out, it's not really exciting anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Although these shows do give us. They're supposed to give us like faith in the resiliency of the human spirit and all that.
Oh, there's nothing that could give me more faith in the resiliency of the human spirit than I already possess. No, I'm serious. Like it is.
Not even TLC.
It's bursting forth from me. No.
The TLC channel, no.
So, that at that point, Ella Domri informed Weatherlight's crew about the erratic portal.
Ooh.
Erratic portal, yeah. A large planar portal of Phyrexian creation that was used to transport troops and material to and from Rath. Thinking that this portal was probably their only hope of escaping Rath, Urte volunteered to learn as much as he could about the portal, while the rest of the crew rescued Sisse and hopefully activated it by the time they needed to leave. So, with their new alliance struck and Weatherlight ready to fly, the elves and Weatherlight's crew hatched a plan against the Stronghold. They decided that Ella Domri, the Oracle, and a contingent of elves would lead a frontal assault against the Stronghold, a full frontal assault, while Weatherlight and her crew infiltrated the fortress through a back door that Stark had informed them of. That is a full backdoor assault.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Remember in like movies,
Surprise back there.
like like movie warnings, they'd be like, "This movie has full frontal nudity," or it's like it only shows a bum. Anyways, so they loaded everybody onto Weatherlight and set sail for the Stronghold. But they did have to make a quick stop at the erratic portal to drop Urte off first, telling him that they would stop to pick him up before they plane shifted. Yeah, he doesn't have a huge role in the story.
Oh, is that that goofy guy? The goofy.
Yeah, he's the wizard with the blonde hair.
Oh yeah, the cocky wizard.
And actually, in the artwork of Urte that I showed my co-hosts, that's the art from his card from Exodus, and you can see in the background that he's like standing against that canyon, and you can see the erratic portal in the background. So he's just like I'm waiting.
Ah.
So, while all of that was going on in Skyshroud, Predator had arrived back at the Stronghold. Volrath was understandably disappointed that he did not have proof of Gerard's death, but he was pleased to have most of the legacy artifacts back in his possession, especially Karn, who, to his surprise, was no longer a statue. An even more pleasant surprise was Weatherlight's first mate, Tongarth. He had attempted to stow away aboard Predator, but he was found and imprisoned. Pretty quickly, actually. The plan didn't work out too well.
Oh.
He was hanging onto a rope that was attached to Predator, and as he was climbing up it, some of the crew members of Predator saw it and were like, well, once he climbs aboard, let's just like beat him and imprison him.
Wow.
Yeah, so it didn't work too well.
So he did not stow away at all.
No, he didn't even get to that. I shouldn't have said that.
Yes. There was no away. None.
So, Volrath ordered that his two prisoners be taken to be tortured and the rest of the legacy be taken to the Sliver Queen for safekeeping. We left that part of Volrath's story out of this series as we covered it not too long ago in our Slivers Explained episode. So if you'd like to find out more about Volrath and the Sliver Queen, go back and give that a listen. Anyway, Volrath's plan for, I believe that was episode 99, actually. I only remember it because, 99. 99
Got
bucks a
99
month.
slivers and Volrath ain't one.
Woo! But he could go in the deck because it's 5 colors.
Okay.
99 red balloons.
So Volrath's plan for Tongarth was simple. He wanted the Minotaur to replace Vadi Ildal as Grevin's second in command aboard Predator. So Volrath, that was the guy that Grevin threw over the side.
Buddy.
Yeah.
R.I.P. man.
Yeah.
He's like, let's just shoot him in the head. And it didn't go well.
So Volrath placed him under, this is Tongarth, placed him under a super hot beam of light that began to mutate and brainwash the Minotaur. Volrath planned to leave him like that until the process was completed.
That sucks.
Yeah, and he's also really, Tongarth is really, I don't know if vain is the right word, but he's very concerned with his appearance, and he is quite an impressive physical specimen among his type of Minotaur. And this process, like, it turns him white and it inverts his horns, and after, like, it really takes a chunk out of his ego, but it also makes him like super strong too. So it's kind of a
push and pull.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Karn's,
No more tiny hooves.
actually, I think the hooves stay pretty small. But
Okay.
for Karn's torture, the Evankar had something different in mind. Knowing all about Karn's pacifistic vow, Volrath put Karn in a room that would incessantly tumble. So much so that the golem would tumble from wall to wall and from floor to ceiling.
Put him in a rock tumbler?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
He's gonna come out so shiny. That's really funny.
And then he sent in an endless supply of mogs into the room, and as Karn fell against the wall, floor, and ceiling, his massive weight crushed them, which is pretty good torture for a pacifist.
Wow, that is just twisted.
No, he's a tortury type. So Volrath left Karn with these parting words.
You've failed Gerard. You've failed the legacy. You've failed yourself. I can do no more.
Nice. I wonder how long you would have left him in there, too. So by this point, Weatherlight's crew had separated from Eladamri and his forces. They were quickly approaching the Stronghold from the south, where its furnace's exhaust was released. Stark correctly assumed that the chimneys would be large enough to admit the skyship, and once inside, they planned to move upward through the Stronghold until they reached the area where Stark told them Volrath kept prisoners. And he kept prisoners in a few places, so they had to look in a few different places.
Yeah, he's really into the whole prisoner torture shtick.
Yeah,
it's kind of his MO.
Yeah, I don't even think he would have been a good clan leader, right? Because I don't think, I think if you're that kind of tortury type, I don't think that's something that. I mean, obviously his upbringing was fine because Gerard was raised by the same guy and he turned out okay. So I think this is more nature over nurture. I think he would have been torturing people even if he hadn't failed that rite of passage.
Well, yeah, that wasn't that traumatic of an event.
He's fine. So Weatherlight wasn't traveling through the Stronghold's furnaces for long before the slivers came at them. Stark had told them that the hive-minded creatures lived in the ventilation ducts that pockmarked the ceiling above them. The deck of Weatherlight was covered in them in an instant, and as more arrived, the bigger and stronger they all became, as slivers are wont to do.
Slivers.
It was Hannah who figured out that if they were separated from one another, they became weaker and easier to kill.
Man, Hannah's just really doing work.
Oh,
you know? Yeah. Sometimes, fight smarter, not harder, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And actually, I think the flavor text on her original card from Invasion maybe is the first time she got a dedicated card is what does she say?
It's not fight smarter, not harder.
That'd be a good one. When they do a reprint, they should do that. Oh yeah, I never thought I'd spend my life fighting. I'm a maker, not a destroyer.
Nice.
Quite a few members of the crew were killed, and even more were injured in the assault, but Weatherlight's crew was able to beat the slivers back until the ones that remained slithered up the ventilation ducts they had emerged from.
Yeah, right? That's a lot of sound effects.
Hannah also noticed that among the biological slivers, there were ones made entirely of metal. These were, of course, the slivers that Volrath constructed to keep an eye on the hive. Stark informed them all of that fact, and that with the metallic slivers present, it was a certainty that Volrath now knew that Weatherlight had infiltrated the Stronghold and was on its way to rescue Sisay, Tongarth, Karn, and the Legacy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, remember when we explained that Stark planned to rescue his daughter from the Stronghold after he'd lured Gerard to Rath? Well, it's at this point in the story that Stark decided for the first time that he needed to be a loyal member of Weatherlight's crew. His thinking was that once Volrath saw, through his connection to the slivers, hive mind, or not the connection to the slivers hive mind, but through his metallic slivers, that Stark was working with Weatherlight's crew. He would be marked for death as well as the rest of them. Stark also thought that his daughter, Takara, might already be dead, so it didn't really matter if he remained loyal to Volrath anyway. And it just goes to show you that even though Stark had done a lot of questionable things in his life, it's never too late to do the right thing. Or at least the thing that will allow you to rescue your daughter.
And he's with a merry band of people who are awesome, so might as well be the time.
Yeah.
Merry band of people fighting off slivers.
Yeah.
Actually, the slivers will not be coming back in this episode, so that's the only time we're going to see them.
Then I'm leaving.
Oh,
Bye.
Wait,
I came here for slivers.
Isn't the legacy with the Sliver Queen, though?
you know what, Eric? That's a spoiler, and I was trying to trick you, but you passed.
Well, that's not a spoiler. That's
common
said
sense.
that like 5 minutes ago.
That's
like a
listening
story arc
skills.
from the 90s.
Well, yeah.
So once Weatherlight moved through the furnace, the next stop was the Stronghold's death pits. The death pits were a series of chambers filled with an oily black, semi-sentient substance that separated the furnace from the Stronghold above.
Oof.
So they're almost there. But before they made it to the Stronghold proper, the black mass that filled the pits began to move and shoot out massive tendrils toward Weatherlight, attempting to catch it and pull it below its surface. Fortunately, the death pits were unsuccessful in ensnaring Weatherlight, and she hauled ass out of there and finally arrived at her destination.
If they actually said that in the book, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Haul ass.
Seems like an up-and-coming neighborhood.
The death pits.
The death pits, yeah.
Like how it looks like this guy, like in this artwork here, it looks like his torso has an arm coming out of it holding a knife.
Yeah, it does actually, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think the best depiction of the next part is the card Volrath Stronghold, which shows the Stronghold from below. So by this point in the story, Weatherlight had traveled up through this part of the structure, and past it was the main part of the Stronghold, the part that housed Volrath's throne room, research labs, torture chambers, dungeons, dream halls, and the map room. Those were just Volrath's rooms. That part of the Stronghold also housed several docks for skyships like Predator, warrens for the large contingent of Mog troops, and quarters for human soldiers. Lastly, the city of Traitors was located in the crater directly beneath the Stronghold. This was where the Ilkor, Ilvek, and Ildal populations of Rath live. So if you look at Volrath Stronghold, that beam is shooting down. The city of Traitors is what's surrounding that beam.
It's Traitor Crater.
Mm-hmm. And then in the artwork for City of Traitors, you can see that beam and that crater that's making all that juicy flowstone.
Traitor crater.
So once Weatherlight had risen to the main part of the Stronghold, they approached an empty balcony and sidled up to it. Beyond the balcony was only darkness, and as Weatherlight approached, a Stronghold guard emerged. Surprised at seeing the skyship, the guard opened his mouth to cry out for alarm, but by that point, Miri had already jumped from Weatherlight to the balcony. The guard collapsed in a fury of claws and fur before he could make a sound.
She probably drew a card too.
Oh yeah. With a leap like that, you know it.
Yeah.
So Gerard decided that this was as good a place as any to start their search of the Stronghold. Stark and Krovax joined Miri on the balcony, with Gerard also joined them. That left Hannah in command of Weatherlight until Gerard returned. Gerard's last command before they left was for Weatherlight to meet his rescue party at the Gardens, a part of the Stronghold much further up from where they were.
Was it a secret garden?
It was definitely like secluded, or it was only allowed for Volrath. It was like his...
Oh, it was his private little garden where he takes tea. He's like, I wonder who I'm going to torture today. And then he has like a little sip of tea.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if he still has to eat. Like a lot of completed Phyrexians don't have to eat, but he's not... He doesn't seem like he's all metal, but I don't know if he's like living tissue. I'm not sure. But he might drink tea.
Why
Yeah, and the garden was just
Why not?
Yeah, it wasn't terribly sinister. It looked like a garden. There were some carnivorous plants, but overall, it was more that Stark had told Weatherlight's crew that the space would be large enough for Weatherlight to wait without attracting too much attention to itself.
All right.
So almost as soon as the rescue party entered the room that led off the balcony, they encountered another shapeshifter. Instead of taking on the form of Miri or Hannah, this one appeared to be the angel Selenia.
Did they see it like transform into the angel, or
No.
how do they know it's a shapeshifter?
Well, they don't know it's a shapeshifter. We know it's a shapeshifter
Okay.
because we're,
They don't
we've
know
read
we
the
know
stories.
they know.
Yeah. So this was when Gerard and Miri realized that maybe Krovax wasn't the most stable individual to bring on a mission like this, because as soon as he saw the shit, and like by this point he's like shown them pictures of his family's dead bodies and stuff, and they're like, great, that looks like it was a really fun barbecue. But as soon as he saw the shapeshifter, he chased after it, leaving the rest of his party behind. By the time Gerard, Miri, and Stark caught up to Krovax, he had caught up to the shapeshifter and was literally tearing it to pieces while his party looked on.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So once the creature was a pool of blood and bone, Krovax finally relented. He explained to Gerard and the rest why he reacted that way to seeing what he thought was Selenia, Urborg, and all that. The things we've discussed in the previous. I think that was mostly part 2. But on top of all that, he told them that when Predator attacked Weatherlight, he saw her flying high above, so he knew she was on Rath. Although that could have just been a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
And Gerard was like, well, you're acting kind of nuts, and we don't really want that kind of thing on this very important mission. So Gerard thought it was a good idea for Krovax to go back to Weatherlight and wait for them. Krovax didn't want to do that, so Gerard asked him if he would be able to keep his cool on the mission, this very important mission. And he said he could, so despite Gerard's better judgment, he allowed Krovax to continue to accompany them to find the rest of their crew and the legacy artifacts.
He's not gonna keep his cool.
Of course not.
Sits him down on a rock and he like gets eye level with him. He's like, so, are you gonna be a good boy, or do we need to send you back to the ship?
And
I'll be a good boy.
I'll be a good boy, I promise.
And after seeing that, Gerard's like, well, if he says no, like, what am I gonna do about it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Krovax is a big guy. So with the issue settled, they began to ascend the Stronghold in search of what they came for. Their next stop brought them to Volrath's map room. In the center of the room lay a series of projectors that illuminated a 3-dimensional map of Dominaria. It was marked in various locations with Phyrexian and Rathi troops and transports like Predator. And for the first time, Gerard, Miri, and Krovax understood what Volrath's plan was. We know from our Bloodline series that Rath and its eventual overlay of Dominaria was actually Yawgmoth's big plan, but by this point, the implementation of that plan had fallen to Volrath, the then Evankar. And it will be some time before Gerard gets to know all about Yawgmoth's role in all of this. So at this point, to Gerard and the rest of his party, Volrath was planning to invade Dominaria, and they had to stop him.
Stop that man.
Anyway, they continued their search. First, they found the tumbling room that Karn was locked in and freed him. Next, they found the room that Tongarth was being tortured in.
The rock tumbler.
The rock tumbler, yeah. It's actually really gross when they pull him out because he's just like covered in like gore and like mog, because he's just been crushing little mogs for it's been a couple of days he's been in there.
Oh wow.
Jeez.
So
are mogs cute?
no, they're like gross little goblins. They're like worse than Squee. They're a type of Rathi goblin.
I guess I better put in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah,
because
always do
put
MTG after.
If you put in mogs, you get some political man.
it's like, who are you gonna vote for? A political man.
Oh yeah, they're goofy little goblins.
Yeah, like Squee is way cuter than that. They have like weird heads like that. The weird gross heads.
Yeah, Squee looks sweet.
Yeah, he's kind of a sweet guy. He's a cabin boy, you know.
He's a real cabin boy.
And he always comes back.
So they they freed Tongarth before his transformation could be fully completed. Gerard and Miri dispatched the Phyrexians that were administering the Minotaur's torture, and they continued their search for their captain. I did mention that this torture just made Tahngarth stronger and a more formidable force in combat, and it also made him more bloodthirsty. It was also supposed to make him more docile to his captors, so that he would willingly be Grevin's number one rather. And all but that last part occurred, the final brainwashing to make him more docile. So they just made one of the strongest members of the crew even stronger. So that was a bit of a mistake.
Whoops.
Oopsies.
Whoops-a-doodle.
So in any case, the group continued their search. They next came across one of Volrath's research labs, where they found a giant glass cylinder that contained Sisay. So they freed her, but as they were leaving, Sisay transformed into an armored Stronghold guard. Another trick.
It's a tricks.
Uh-oh.
Volrath is pretty tricksy.
He is.
Yeah.
His friends call him Trixie.
He probably doesn't like that.
He probably doesn't have friends.
No. No, he murdered all his friends. So before Gerard, Miri, or the rest of them could react, the guards scurried away. So they continued their search. That's like literally what happens. The guard just like, ooh, gotta go.
Bye.
So it was at this point that Stark informed his fellow crew members that Sisay was likely being kept in Volrath's aforementioned Dream Halls reserve list.
Hey.
Check it out. He thought, but didn't say, that was also where he suspected his daughter Takara was being kept. And in case you aren't familiar with Volrath's Dream Halls, they were created by Volrath, of course, to house physical manifestations of his unconscious. He often used the halls to examine the events of his past, colored by his own perspective. He also used it to sort of dry run the events he planned to play out in the future. And he also kept prisoners there sometimes. Anyway, on their way to the halls, they had to cross one of the many bridges that crisscrossed the interior of the Stronghold. The bridge was quite narrow, so they had to cross in single file, and they really couldn't pass each other. And so when the group was about halfway across the bridge, they were attacked. And not by some kind of ensnaring bridge, although that can be found in the Strongholds.
Cool.
They were attacked by the Dark Angel Selenia, and this time she wasn't a shapeshifter.
Ooh, no.
Oh.
Selenia attacked from above, although I guess they didn't really know that, because it could always be a shapeshifter. I think that last guard was also a shapeshifter, too.
I guess so.
It's just like, they just don't say what it is. It's just like it transformed into a guard, and then it scurried away, so...
That's what I figured when
that's what I
they
thought.
broke her out,
Yeah.
and it's a shapeshifter.
Ooh, gotta run. So, Selenia attacked from above. She dove toward Krovax with her sword drawn, and with her cat-like reflexes, Miri quickly intercepted the angel's attack, diving in front of Krovax. The two had a bit of a back-and-forth sword fight until Selenia saw an opening in Miri's defenses and was able to stab the Catwoman. Miri dropped her sword and fell to the bridge with her hands pressed against a deep wound in her stomach.
Oh, no.
Oof.
Yeah, not the Catwoman. Come on. Just as Selenia was about to land the killing stroke on Miri, Krovax joined the fray, and the two fell into an embittered sword fight. Krovax asking Selenia why she didn't save his family and why she didn't love him, and Selenia pretty much saying, "I am what I was made for," which is a Phyrexian stooge. I like to call her Phyrexian stooge. As the fight continued, Gerard began to triage Miri's wound while Karn, Tahngarth, and Stark looked on. Remember, they can't come to Miri's aid because the bridge is
single
so
file.
narrow. Yeah,
Yeah.
The bridge.
single file. The fight ended when Selenia suddenly froze with her sword upraised, preparing for a downward stroke, and in that moment, Krovax thrust upward and his blade connected, piercing her heart, or at least where her heart would have been were she human. Selenia then flew up into the air and looked down at Krovax and said,
I'm sorry. Our destinies are completed. We're both doomed.
Then her stabbed body shattered into countless glittering shards.
Huh.
So, the shards that were Selenia fell onto and around Krovax. When he cried out in despair at what he'd done, the shards went into his mouth, ears, eyes, and nose. This caused him to scream more hoarsely and claw at his face. Then he shuddered as if he were having difficulty swallowing, but that was just the shards migrating into his body.
Ooh.
Oof.
It's like when you get glitter in your eyes. Like that is not fun.
I
for
bet it's
Yeah.
bad.
anyone.
I bet it's bad.
Do you guys ever watch those Will It Blend videos?
Oh, I love Will It Blend.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
just
don't
put things
breathe
in a
this.
blender and they're like, will it blend?
Oh,
Yeah. But they're
My
like,
God.
Angel
like,
dust.
like-
Don't breathe this.
I also like there's many YouTube channels with like hydraulic presses,
Yeah,
so they just
yeah.
put things in hydraulic presses and
that's fun.
See
And
what
watch
happens?
it explode or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Krovac seemed to be all right once the glittering shards entered his body and the whole thing was over, but he soon collapsed to the bridge crying. He's a bit of a like dude, really? You're asking her? Don't ever ask why don't you love me? You know, that's just a
Yeah.
blanket statement to everybody. Never ask that
I
question.
think the question is, Krovax, why don't you love yourself?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Boom. That's some truth for you, buddy. So once Gerard had patched up Miri enough to move her, he ordered Tongarth and Karn to carry both she and Krovax to the gardens where Weatherlight waited, while Gerard and Stark continued the search for Sisay and the legacy artifacts. Ooh, they're almost there. This is getting good. So while Minotaur and Gollum were carefully following the directions Gerard had given them to the gardens, Karn suddenly stopped at the mouth of a tunnel they had just passed. Tongarth thought Karn had heard something they would need to dispatch, but when he asked the Golem why he'd stopped, Karn told him that he felt the presence of the legacy. Karn quickly passed the limp body of Krovax to Tongarth and said,
You must carry them both to the ship.
he told the Minotaur, and then, without another word, he was gone. She's gone. So the Minotaur trusted Karn, and he maintained his current route back to Weatherlight. See, this is what he looks like now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's jacked. I love that. I
Look at
love the
those.
look on Miri's face. Like, ugh, what a day.
And
Yeah.
Krovax
Look
is
at his
just,
thighs.
I
Wow.
know.
The mix of white and red's kind of cool on his like chest.
Oh yeah. He looks. He looks super cool. After his torture in the Stronghold. So Tongarth made it back to Weatherlight carrying his unconscious friends, and when he did, he took them to Orm for medical attention. Miri's wound was easy enough to patch and dress, but even though Krovax had no apparent injuries from his fight with Selenia, he looked extremely pale, and Orm noticed that his eyes had changed color from brown to yellowish white. Tongarth told Orm about the angel shards entering Krovax, and she assumed that was the cause of his new appearance, but she also feared he would continue to transform. A little something from Orm about Krovax at this point.
Miri is the injured one, and yet for some reason I feel Krovax is the one I am losing, to a disease I cannot name, unless I call it damnation. Krovax loved the one he thought of as his guardian angel, but he did not realize that in the end, it was not Selenia who watched over him and longed for his happiness and fought for his life. And I failed.
You know, that just goes to show you. You know, maybe everything we need is right in front of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't go chasing waterfalls.
Don't do it.
Yeah. So, at this point, Karn returned to Weatherlight. He had been successful in retrieving the legacy artifacts from the Sliver Queen. When he and Tongarth split up, Karn had followed the presence of the artifacts he could feel to the Sliver Queen's nest. At first,
Nice.
the Queen wasn't willing to give up the artifacts that Volrath had charged her with protecting, but when Karn explained to her that the legacy was as much a part of him as her slivers were a part of her, she allowed the golem to take the artifacts and leave.
Oh,
Jeez.
cool.
It's like-
So it's kind of like a hey, you know, this is I know you,
Yeah,
you know me.
You get it. Yeah. So, in addition to the artifacts that Sisay had collected over her years of searching, Karn also recovered a part of the legacy called the Sky Shaper. It's like, I got it. I
Yeah,
love
he's
that
holding
picture.
it over his head. It's really funny.
Yeah, he should be careful about lifting things above the shoulder.
Yeah.
The Sky Shaper was an artifact that, when added to Weatherlight's already powerful engine, increased the vessel's top speed considerably. Having an intimate knowledge of the vessel, Karn was quickly able to find a way to incorporate the Sky Shaper into her engine.
I'll get us to the portal, but I can't guarantee what it'll do to the ship.
Oh, and so I'm already working on the next, the next novel, like that this kind of thing that we're doing for the next novel with the next cycle of books, and in that book they talk about how before they left Rath they stole some Phyrexian weaponry that they adapted onto Weatherlight's weapon systems. They don't mention it at all in this book, so I'm just kind of mentioning it here that in addition to this, they're also going to steal some weaponry that will later be installed, and as the story goes on, just so you're not like, you didn't say that.
It must have been like when they were writing the book, it's like, I guess they should have like some better weapons.
Yeah, there you go.
So unfortunately, just as Karn made this upgrade, Predator appeared above them, ready for another assault led by Greven Ilvac. This time, though, Weatherlight was prepared for an attack, and with the new addition to her engine, Hannah was able to avoid Predator's attempts at harpooning and hitting Weatherlight with cannon strikes.
Hooray!
It's also important to mention that Tahngarth decided that Gerard and Stark might need an extra pair of hands, so he went back into the Stronghold to find them.
Yeah, Tahngarth.
He seems like a pretty solid guy.
He's great, yeah. He's like a diet Karn.
Aw.
Yeah.
A poor man's Karn.
He's a poor man's Karn, yeah.
Well, but I mean, like, Tahngarth will fight stuff while Karn won't now, so...
But we love Karn.
Yeah, But you're right. You're right.
Don't you talk shit about Karn.
In a fight, Tahngarth is even better now after his torture. So, remember the alliance with Eladamri and the other Rathi natives? You guys remember that?
How could I forget?
Yeah. So, just as Weatherlight was fighting off Predator, they were in the midst of their assault on the Stronghold's entrance, and they were having quite a bit of success doing so. And while that was going on, Gerard and Stark had finally reached Volrath's dream halls. As soon as Gerard entered the halls, he was struck with visions of his early life from his brother's point of view, then visions of their teenage years.
Aww.
Yeah, it's pretty
It's
sad.
them like skipping in fields and stuff and like having little snowball fights.
Ooh. And Voul's failed rite of passage. Then Voul's rise to power and his eventual completion and transformation into Volrath, and that's when Gerard finally realized what we already know. Volrath and Voul were one and the same, and at that moment, all Gerard felt for his brother was pity at what he'd become.
Oh, shit.
And that's how you know, like, Gerard and, characters like this are, like, really good people, because it's like, Gerard could be mad or, about everything that Volrath has done to him and everybody else. But he's just like, man, what a shame.
Yeah, I was like, that used to be my brother.
Yeah,
Holy
he just pities the fool.
He says,
That's right.
and he says, he is heavy. He's not my brother.
So the visions of the past then became visions of the future, or a future that Volrath intended. He saw Phyrexian armies invading Dominaria, with Volrath leading them. The vision finally ended with what Gerard thought was the current reality. Volrath telling Gerard that he basically took everything he had ever wanted from him the day Gerard saved his life, and that they both would have been better off if Gerard had let him die. Stark must have been experiencing similar visions because it was at that moment that he stabbed Volrath in the back with his dagger. That's classic Stark move. Volrath easily threw Stark aside, removed the dagger from his own back, and Gerard watched as the wound rapidly closed, like Wolverine style.
damn.
Yeah. Understandably upset, Gerard drew his sword and lunged at Volrath, and just then the vision disappeared and two women suddenly came at him. One of them was Sisay, and the other was Stark's daughter, Takara. Most of the vision disappeared. The Volrath part of it remained and watched the two men fight their former allies. And they were this is legit Sisay and Takara, and they're being like mind controlled, or they don't exactly get into it.
Ooh, that's rough. That's like when one of your loved ones is a zombie and they're coming at you. It's like
Just
oof.
pop them,
Yeah.
pop them in the headshot.
Great.
Yeah, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. You want to be a zombie?
You didn't even second guess yourself.
You can't do
We
it. It's a
have
zombie.
talked about this at length.
It's a zombie.
And Kevin will be like, so like, if you see someone who's a zombie, who's your family member, like you're gonna have to shoot them. And I'm like, okay.
Put him down.
Fine.
Fine.
So Gerard had his hands full with Sisay while Takara attacked her father, slashing him across the face, blinding him.
Damn.
Yeah, slashed his eyes.
Like, hitting both the eyes with one slash is extremely difficult to do. just for how the face is shaped.
Yeah, she would have had
Or
to
it's-
also like cut his bridge open.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she did.
Just saying.
The only
Yeah.
image, the
Anyways.
only images of Stark. Yeah, I agree. The mechanics of it are a little hinky, but the the only images of Stark post eye slashing, he's wearing a bandage. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But you'd think there'd be, if you cut the bridge, like that's a lot of, that'd be rough. Anyways, Gerard was eventually able to disarm both women without hurting them. He knocked them both unconscious. He then chased after the figure of Volrath that he thought was previously part of his vision. And just when Gerard had cornered Volrath, Tahngarth burst into the chamber and the two slashed and stabbed at Volrath until Gerard landed a killing blow, telling him,
You've got your childhood wish at last. Now you get to die.
fuck yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
Such a good line.
It's
Good line.
fun that he killed him.
Yeah. So the figure of Volrath was not something conjured up in the dream halls, but it also wasn't Volrath himself. As Gerard and Tahngarth watched the life drain from its body, it transformed back into the natural state of a shapeshifter. Neither was terribly surprised. They both knew killing Volrath wouldn't be that easy. Gerard thought that Volrath might still be controlling the shapeshifter, and before it died, he said,
Enjoy your deception, Vool. I'll count this as practice.
Yeah. Anyway, with Sisay and Takara secured, they began the long trek to the gardens where Weatherlight waited for them. And this brings us to the final chapter of this story. While Gerard, Tahngarth, and Stark were carrying the rescued back to Weatherlight, I bet like Tahngarth was just carrying everybody.
Yeah.
Like Sisay, Takara, and Stark.
How
all
could,
at once.
yeah,
Yes.
how could
Eh.
Stark carry shit? He's blind.
Yeah. And Gerard. Gerard's just on for the ride. Yeah.
Yeah. So while they were taking them back to Weatherlight, Eladamri's forces were being driven back by the might of the Stronghold, and they eventually had to break off their attack if they wanted to survive. During this time, Weatherlight was still evading Predator, and let's not forget about the wizard Erte. He had been successful in opening the erratic portal and waited for Weatherlight to return for him. And in the midst of all this, a sinister transformation was occurring. In the infirmary of Weatherlight, Krovax was turning from human to vampire.
Oh.
And I don't know why absorbing the shards of Selenia's body would turn him into a vampire, but that's just what happened. May have had something to do with Krovax's cursed life from when he broke the artifact. Maybe not. She did say, Selenia did say we're both doomed. I don't know.
Yeah.
But apparently in the multiverse, you can be bitten by a vampire, but you can also just turn into a vampire.
You just breathe angel dust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Krovax had started to hear voices in his head, voices that commanded him to sabotage Weatherlight any way he could. The voices that he heard came from the ineffable himself, Yawgmoth, who saw something special in the young man, much the same way he saw something special in Vool years earlier. Anyway, Krovax obeyed. He rose from his bed and headed for Weatherlight's deck. Miri noticed this and followed him. Like Orem, Miri sensed something changing in Krovax, and she was getting pretty curious.
As a cat is wont to be.
And the art, this art is from the original printing of Curiosity.
Oh, that's awesome.
So just as that cat and mouse game was getting underway, Gerard and his party made it back to Weatherlight. Ropes were extended, and Tahngarth, Sisay, Stark, and Takara were brought aboard. Greven saw them climbing back aboard Weatherlight from his position on Predator, and before Gerard could make the climb back to the ship, Greven quickly shimmied down his own rope to the gardens so he could challenge Gerard in single combat. He's trying to make up for his previous failure.
I'm gonna get you.
So unfortunately for Weatherlight, Krovax was on deck, heading for the sails with sabotage on his mind. Miri stopped him before he could do any real damage, but in the ensuing fight, the two fell over the side of Weatherlight's railing. The fall wasn't far enough to hurt either of them too much, and Krovax immediately went for one of the ropes that still hung from the airship. So Miri pounced on him, and they fell into a vicious fight. Gerard was eventually able to best Greven without killing him, though. He then found one of the ropes still hanging from Weatherlight and began to climb until he saw Miri and Krovax fighting. Gerard stopped and was about to go back to Miri when their gazes met across the gardens. Mary could see the shadow of Predator advancing on Weatherlight and knew that if she didn't act now, Weatherlight would be lost. The legacy would be lost, and everything she had fought for would have been for nothing. And as Gerard watched, Miri stopped fighting, bared her neck to Krovax, and he obliged by sinking his newly formed fangs into her flesh.
Oof.
With no hope of saving her, the sound of Weatherlight's engines roared as the ship began its run for the portal. So before Karn installed... Yeah, Miri's dead. R.I.P. for Miri.
I'm sad about it.
Me too. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But,
yeah,
you
obviously
know,
she's like, hey, if I let him try and save me, you know.
Yeah. And, you know, this is the life she chose, right? She could have went with that cat guy all those years ago. I'm not saying she made the wrong decision. I'm just saying, this is this is what she wanted.
Maybe she'll turn into a vampire cat.
Well, that's the whole like planar chaos thing, right? Like you have the Krovax that's like white, and then you have the Miri that's a vampire in the alternate version. And in the alternate version of this, like the card Keen Sense, it has Krovax getting away on like a rope ladder, and Miri's like, oh no, wait, I'm a vampire.
Yeah. Well, and in the alternate version, Miri kills Selenia, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and becomes cursed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Miri the Cursed. So, before Karn installed the Skyshaper into Weatherlight's engine, it had already been a faster ship than Predator. That, coupled with its smaller size, made it more maneuverable. But Predator was a far more capable warship, and just as Weatherlight raced toward the erratic portal, Predator raced after it. They made it to the portal before Predator could catch them, though. Unfortunately for Urte, they were going too fast and were in far too much danger to stop and pick him up. Once Weatherlight went, sorry, he's just fucked, yeah.
It's like, I've been waiting here the whole time, you don't even pick me up?
Yeah, come on.
He was actually like hanging from a rope like on the portal's archway, and like as the ship passed under him, he let go of the rope, but the ship was going too fast and he just like went past the ship went past him, and he kept falling and just
Plummeted to his death?
No, he's fine. He's just stuck in Rath.
Oh, no way.
So once Weatherlight went through the portal, it closed, and a split second after that, Erte watched Predator crash into the archway of the portal structure. The crash wasn't bad enough to bring the ship down, but it was bad enough that Grevin would have to limp back to the Stronghold with it. He didn't return empty-handed, though. He took Erte as a prisoner, and we'll have to wait to find out the rest of Erte's story later on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Damn, Urte.
Yeah. We hardly knew ye.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Weatherlight and what was left of her crew passed through the portal safely. As far as where they ended up, we'll find that out on the next episode of this series, our explained series. And now at the end of this chapter of the story, this Rath and Storm chapter, I think Gerard is a lot closer to the person that is worthy of the legacy, someone that we can truly call a hero. And you might be thinking, oh, it wasn't very heroic to leave his friends behind on a harsh and foreign plane. But like we mentioned in part 2, when Tongarth arrived in Benalia to ask for Gerard's help, being a hero is about something different than always doing the honorable or noble thing. Being a hero is about responsibility, about seeing the larger picture, and about seeing the needs of the many, the needs of the mission over the needs of the few.
Oh, I was so going to say the Spock quote, but you've pretty much said it.
And
isn't that things that Urza did?
What's that?
Yeah, in his own way, yeah.
In his own way.
Yeah, but Urza didn't have any,
about
and he
it.
didn't have any inner conflict about it. Gerard's like, I don't want to hurt people around me, and Urza's like, fuck them.
Yeah, Urza's kind of like,
I'll just do it.
I mean, as much as Urza's done for Dominaria, he's also kind of like an emotionless piece of shit.
Yeah.
So, and so I think that was the biggest hurdle that had held Gerard back until this point in the story. He finally decided to stop running from the legacy because he realized that it didn't matter if he was the culmination of a millennia-long eugenics project, or if Yawgmoth had ordered the deaths of him and his family, or even if he truly was the only one who was capable of wielding the legacy once fully assembled. He realized that even if his life had been untouched by Urza and everything that followed in Urza's wake, he still would have fought to defend Dominaria from Phyrexia or Rath or anyone else who threatened his way of life. Because just as tyrants everywhere do, Yawgmoth created his own worst enemy in Urza, and by extension in Gerard, and Sisay, for that matter. And, when your goal involves oppressing people, there will always be a select few that will rise up and strike back. And they won't do it alone. Those few will rally others that may have been too afraid to fight back without someone to lead them. Sort of like the last, what is that? I think the last Star Wars, Poe says, good people will fight if we lead them. Anyways, that's who Gerard was becoming. He was finally ready to accept the role he would have to play in the wars to come. Not because an ancient and powerful planeswalker decided he had to, but because it was the right thing to do. And that's where we'll pick back up when we cover the first book in the Masquerade cycle.
Nice.
Masquerade.
Did anybody notice I took this from Harry Potter? Just as tyrants everywhere do. But I just replaced Yawgmoth with or I replaced Voldemort with Yawgmoth. Yeah.
Nice. That was great.
Yeah, Half-Blood Prince. Yeah.
That's excellent. So what happened to Sisay and Takara? Did they die?
Fine. No, they're fine.
They're
They're back on Weatherlight.
Okay.
Yep.
They were just
'cause
zombies.
Tangarth carried them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He does all the carrying.
He
They're
carried
good.
them. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And sort of like Tangarth is to Sisay as like Karn is to Gerard. Like he's very devoted to her.
That's sweet.
Yeah. He's a good one.
Yeah, Tangarth
sweet.
is a good guy.
Mm-hmm. He is.
Good guy, Minotaur.
This was a good story. I quite liked this.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I've said like I really enjoyed Time Streams and Planeswalker and those stories with I think I enjoyed this story most of all so far in these novels because as much as Urza is an enjoyable character, he's kind of hard to relate to, because he doesn't really have those human connections. Like in each book with Urza, in the first one, like Thanos is like the reader's conduit to Urza, his connection to humanity, and then Planeswalker it's Zancha, in Bloodlines it's in Time Streams it's Karn and also Baron, but in this story it's just a bunch of regular people, so it's much more
and there's there's loyalty and love, and it's more in the, not as much in the background, it's more in the foreground for sure.
Yeah, and it's also much more like you said, like it's much more emotionally driven, like the whole thing with Gerard and Volrath, like that whole backstory I think makes for it just makes the things that happen mean more.
Totally.
Yeah, so we'll be continuing this in a few weeks with starting off the Masquerade cycle with the plane that they end up on. Some of you may already know what that plane is.
No spoilers.
But next week we're going to be back with some Strixhaven stuff, and we'll be doing that for a while. We'll see how many we might have to do, like a 6-part set review. I don't know. I'm kidding. But thank you all for listening as usual. We really hope that you enjoy this kind of content, but all our content, of course, we very much enjoy making it. Ainsley, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and it was fun as always.
And
good times.
And follow us at Turn One Soul Ring on all the social media. Email us turnonesoulring@gmail.com if you want. If you really want to get in touch with us quickly, DM us on Instagram at Turn One Soul Ring the podcast. And we'll talk to you next week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
See you around.
Bye now.
Bye, friends.
Turn One Soul Ring.
Hannah is a 1/2, and so yes, would die from dead weight. By the way.
Oh, she's a 1. I thought she was a 2/2, but 1/2 also works.